Hi, and welcome to the next episode of Our Home with Mayor Sendzik. I want to thank you for tuning in. It's always a pleasure to have you join us on the show as we learn more about what's going on in our community. As we're in February now, I'm hoping that the groundhog does show that spring is only 6 weeks away. It has been somewhat of a long winter. We've had a lot of winter snow events here in our community, but I just want to give a shout out to our crew, the plow drivers that are out there cleaning our streets, clearing our streets so it's safe for everybody. They've been doing a wonderful job. So thank you to the city crews for looking after our streets. We're in February. We've got a couple of events, and I find what happens as we head into February, March is that there's a lot of events taking place in our community. One of them is Black History Month for February. So later on in the show, we're going to have some guests joining us who will be talking about Black history and its importance, as well as the events that are going on. We'll be joined by Donna, who's the president of the Central Ontario Network for Black History, and Nyarayi Kapisavanhu, who is the CEO of Niagara, to discuss Black History Month. But prior to that, that'll come in after the break. Prior to the break, we have a good friend, someone who I've come to know over the years, who is passionate about what she does, and it's a very important role that she plays in our community. She's the CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters. Dale Davis, it's great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me, Mayor Sendzik.
You're
Pleased
welcome.
to be here.
You're doing wonderful work, and
thank you.
It's an important milestone for Big Brothers Big Sisters this year.
Huge. It's our 80th anniversary.
80th anniversary.
80th.
In St. Catharines,
yeah.
Niagara.
Yeah, it's hard to get your head around it. So it's, I can't believe it when I look in the archives and see the fabulous history and stories and how we were founded, who we were founded by, Judge Stanbury, and we still have some of his archive letters. And it's just wonderful to go through history.
So Big Brothers Big Sisters, is that one of the oldest? Was it the first chapter here? Or?
Yes, one of the oldest. Yes, in fact, all of Canada, we're one of the oldest. There's
so
about 110 agencies Canada-wide in all the provinces. And we are one of the oldest, I think one of the top 10 in terms of our length of service to Niagara's children and youth.
For a lot of folks who may not know Big Brothers Big Sisters beyond the title, for 80 years, what's the services that you've been providing?
Well, originally when we were founded in 1937, we were founded as Big Brothers. And it was all about getting young boys off the street, matching them with caring adult mentors in terms of male role models. So Judge Stanbury had quite the concept, and it took off from there in terms of seeing how a relationship with a caring adult volunteer consistently with the friendship had transformative effects and impacts on children that were probably predisposed to maybe making wrong life choices, going down a wrong path, didn't have the supports that children with two parents necessarily have. And that concept really took off, probably for the times, but isn't it interesting that we've survived 80 years? So in terms of what we do with children and youth from the ages of 7 to 15, it speaks highly about when we reach them. Our programs are very targeted in terms of Big Brother, Big Sister, and our school-based programs. So in targeting prevention, where you can affect behaviors through this sort of consistent type of support. And it's not about being a teacher or a parent. The friends that these children make with their mentors is exactly that. It's a friendship. And they know those people are there for them always. And something really simple in its concept has huge impacts. And I've seen it in the 14 years I've been CEO.
So 14 years as CEO, incredible. And it's interesting, for 80 years, it started out during the Great Depression.
Yes, it did.
1937, that's a long time ago.
Yes, it did.
1937, where you had a lot of turmoil in society and in community. And you had a lot of challenges facing much the same that we face today.
Yes.
A lot of economic challenges.
Big time.
social upheaval
Yes.
because of the economic challenges?
He writes about it in his letters that we have. It's fascinating how he was on the bench in St. Catharines, and he writes about seeing these young boys, orphans, a lot of them, and you're right about the depression, and they kept appearing in front of him. And he just thought there has to be a better way than how we're dealing with them, to the point of incarceration.
Right.
And this took off actually right across Canada, the issue of looking at solutions and getting to the root cause of something, right? And those are challenging conversations, and they're good ones to have.
And I think we're having more of them
in
community again today.
Yes, we are.
But your background goes further than just the 14 years as CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters, but you also have 20 years. You were with the Ministry as Manager of Social Housing in the Niagara region, and you were also with the Community Care, St. Catharines and Thorold.
Yes.
So you've immersed yourself in a lot of the areas that would have an impact on both children and
huge.
Poverty in our community.
Huge. It's quite a pull in terms of what I value, and I think the alignment of what you do, say, and think in terms of your work is really important to give you passion for what you do.
Right.
And certainly my time with Betty Lou at Community Care was wonderful, and the great work that they do, and there's a lot of the same people that cross over in our community.
Right.
And her goal, as with a lot of us in social service, when you're passionate about it, is to lift up.
Yeah.
And we want a prosperous Niagara. We really do, not just St. Catharines. We want a prosperous Niagara.
Yeah.
You talk about it so eloquently. It's better for everybody, but children and youth are at the heart of what I do.
Right.
Because we want to get them young
Well,
and have them be contributing citizens, right?
And it gets the community to surround the young people in our community. So Big Brothers Big Sisters, you have a network of mentors that are able to work with young people.
Right.
But we still have a ways to go.
Yes,
so it's a milestone year.
Yes,
it's
it
your
is.
80th year, and with every milestone, there's sometimes a project that accompanies it. Is there one with the 80 years?
Yes, there is. The staff have worked really hard putting together an exciting expose of history, historical stories about matches. We have a gentleman that they've been together 50 years in terms of their friendship. It's phenomenal to hear it. We also have impactful stories about families, moms, who have seen their sons or daughters impacted. So if you go on our website at bbbsmentors.ca/80and80, you'll really come into the library of what we've got and what we've done and the lives that we've impacted. And for the most part, the stories just give you such a wonderful feeling that we are making progress. And these children that we served years ago, look where they are, what they've become wherever they live. Yeah. They've got this, they want to pay it forward, pay it back. And we have a sense of, I think there's an obligation for us to do that in our community. It's, for me, that's what I see that's going to make it better, one child at a time.
So that's exciting.
It is exciting.
80 and 80 campaign to celebrate your 80th, and more information you can find on the website.
Yeah.
As well, we're in February. You've got a big campaign. Tell us a bit about the campaign.
Yes. Bowl for Kids' Sake, particularly for us, we're proud to say we have the incredible Niagara Tim Hortons ownership. They've been supporting us for, 13, 14 years as our title sponsor for the campaign. A lot of alignment there in terms of Tim's support through to children and youth in all the communities, whether it's through sport, recreation. So there's a great alignment in their culture and ours in terms of what we do. So they're our title sponsor for the campaign. But Bowl for Kids' Sake across Canada, I sort of give a context of it's like Run for the Cure, if you will, although not healthcare. But it raises about $8 million for children and youth, Canadian children and youth, to get them matched, get them off a wait list where they're really waiting such a long time to have a caring mentor in their life. So this campaign for us represents about 30% of our budget.
For your budget for the year,
yeah. And it's as it is for all social service agencies trying to raise much needed funds. For Big Brothers and Big Sisters, the uniqueness for us is all of our funds are raised through the goodwill and generosity of our community. My family, my friends, And people's misconception is we're funded by the government or we're funded, consistently by our national office. That's not the case.
No.
So this campaign, which historically has been successful and helped us reach our goal, really sets us up to sponsor the 80 children I have waiting for mentors. And they've been waiting about 1.5 to 2 years.
Yeah.
So the ages are 7 to 14, and I really want to see these kids match this year. So I hope that everybody is excited. As you said, Walt, there's a lot of great stuff coming at us in February.
I'll be bowling.
Great.
I know the bowling is at the end of
February.
End of February.
Yep.
Bowl for Kids' Sake. They
Yep.
can sign up as teams or individuals.
Yes, and the website is fantastic. It's all there for you to fundraise. February 23rd, February 27th, March 4th. We've
Yep.
got all sorts of shifts.
Yep.
But when you get on bbsmentors.ca or bowl4kids.ca,
Yep.
it just takes you through all the great information you need to register. Easy peasy, start fundraising and have a blast.
Yep.
And the theme this year is zombies.
Yes.
And I will be, whether I'm part of The Walking Dead, I don't know, but they're prepared to dress me up. So this should be hysterical to see what costumes come through the parkway.
As a big fan of Walking Dead, I will make sure that our team is going to be there zombified.
Great.
And we'll be there to promote it. And I know the mayors across Niagara are promoting this. And I'm encouraging everybody, go to the site, sign up. Also, look to get involved. See how you can become a member and really help celebrate the 80th year of Big Brothers Big Sisters here in St. Catharines, Niagara. It's making a difference. It's made a difference for 80 years. It's going to make a difference for another 80 years. So I want to congratulate you, Dale, and your
Thanks.
team, and to all the volunteers that put in so much hard work to help our youth and our community. Keep up the great
Thanks,
work.
Mayor Sendzik.
And I know that you're going to have a successful 80th celebration
I
for
do
Big
too.
Brothers and Big Sisters.
I do too. Thank
So
you.
until that, come back for the remainder of our At Home with Mayor Sendzik. We're going to be talking about Black History Month after the break. We have two special guests who will be taking us through some of the events that are coming up and the importance of Black History celebration here in our community. So stay tuned. Hi, and welcome back to Our Home with Mayor Sendzik. Just before the break, we were talking about Big Brothers Big Sisters here in our community. They have a couple of events coming up. They're celebrating their 80th year here in St. Catharines, as well as they have the Tim Hortons Bowl for Kids' Sake. And as I was saying to lead off the show, there's a lot of events taking place in Niagara, and February is an important month here. We are celebrating Black History Month here, not just in St. Catharines, but in Canada, as well as we got a special event coming up on February 9th. So we have two guests that are joining us here today. We have Donna and Nyarayi. Nyarayi is from Toes, Niagara, and we'll be learning more about Toes in a few minutes. And Donna is a very prominent member of our community who has a rich understanding of Black history, not just here in St. Catharines, but across Canada, and is also very active in a number of different organizations here and as part of the Central Ontario Network for Black History, which you were a founding member.
Yes.
And so let's just go right into Black history and its importance. As a country, we're marking this as Black History Month in February. We've done it for a number of years now. But I think you have a unique perspective on it, because many times we look at it, we look at it from just a community perspective and say, the history of Black people have done this in our community, but you have a very Canadian perspective on it. And then you also, because of your background, and it was your great-grandfather,
Yes.
Adam Nicholson,
Yep.
who came here in 1851 and laid down roots.
Right.
And he was escaping slavery from Virginia.
Right.
So your history goes deep. So touch on your perspective of the importance of celebrating Black History Month. What's something that you want people to understand?
Well, first of all, a lot of Canadians don't realize that we did have slavery here in Canada.
Right.
And when they came with their owners from Britain, France, and all across Canada, they were pretty much enslaved here.
Yeah.
And Niagara-on-the-Lake happened to be the first capital of Upper Canada. And at the time, the Governor General was John Graves Simcoe. And he witnessed, or had someone witnessed, an incident there that got him thinking about slavery. And it was a young woman that was being taken back across the Niagara River to be re-enslaved in the United States. And he wanted to be able to stop that. He couldn't, though. He couldn't get that passed through. He tried to pass an act to end slavery, but couldn't get it passed through his legislature at the time. So he passed a compromise act called the Act to Limit Slavery. And what it said was that any slave that ran away and was coming and made it to Canada would automatically be freed.
Wow.
They would not be re-enslaved, but they would be free. And so, but that didn't free the existing slaves here. So we had a two-tier system of enslaved people and free people.
Okay.
And that didn't end until 1833, which took effect in 34.
Right.
Britain passed emancipation throughout the entire British Commonwealth.
Right.
So it was another 20 years later before slavery was banned in Canada and throughout the whole Commonwealth, including the Caribbean.
Right.
So after that time, of course, many runaway slaves started coming in from the U.S. and finding freedom here, heard about freedom. The War of 1812 also. And so, slavery became a real headstone for the United States. But again, they didn't free their slaves until another 30 years later after the Civil War.
And that's where, in our community, one of the very significant buildings that we have is the BME Church.
Yes.
And I do want to give a shout out to Harriet Tubman School because they did a fundraiser on the GoFundMe page. And as students of a school in our community that's named after Harriet Tubman, which was such a wonderful celebration when the District School Board of Niagara announced the school would be named after Harriet Tubman, of which the surrounding area is very, very closely tied to the history of the Underground Railroad. And the fact that their students took up the initiative on a GoFundMe page to raise money for BME really shows the connection between the school and the BME Church. And we have a rich history because of what you've outlined as that chronology of the history. And so from the time of when Britain in 1834, when it abolished slavery, to when the United States, that period of time, there was a lot of activity that occurred up here.
That's right.
And you were talking about Niagara-on-the-Lake and the role that it played.
Absolutely. There were a lot of blacks that settled in Niagara-on-the-Lake, and eventually, they were elected officials. They had their own businesses.
Really?
Yeah.
So I don't think the public knows that.
Yeah, the Waters family.
Okay.
And there were a lot of businessmen down in Niagara-on-the-Lake, and so they had this in mind. Their freedom was very important to them. And one of those men was Richard Pierpoint. He actually was in the Revolutionary War in the U.S., got his freedom that way.
Okay.
Settled in Niagara-on-the-Lake. He received 200 acres of land as that was what the government gave them after they fought in the Revolutionary War.
Right.
They gave them their freedom and the acreage.
Okay.
And then he sold that acreage and moved to St. Catharines. And what we like about Richard Pierpoint is that he had been a slave from Bandu in Africa when he was 15 years old. And he moved to St. Catharines and lived down, built a cottage, a little cabin rather, down along the canal. And part of his
now, which
property,
canal? Because we've had a couple canals. So which one?
The first one.
So the first
Yeah.
one, so this would have been around 18...
Yeah, it was, well, yeah, during the Revolutionary War was in 1793.
Yeah.
And then he moved with Butler's Rangers. He was part of Butler's Rangers.
Okay.
And then moved to Niagara-on-the-Lake. So this would have been before the first canal was built, but it was after that his property was used for that. And he's been credited sort of as the first black man that lived in St. Catharines.
Really?
Yeah.
And where would have his cabin have been? In Port Dalhousie, or?
No, it was down, it's down at Centennial Park.
Centennial Park?
Yeah, and there's a marker there for him talking about Richard
So
Pierrepoint.
that-
Yeah.
oh, okay.
Yeah. So
Amazing.
yeah, and he was a real pioneer. It take a long time to go into his wonderful history, but that is, and it's marked down there. There's a provincial plaque down there to recognize him. And
fascinating.
yeah, and then he moved from here later on and went and moved up in the Garifraxa township up around Wellington County.
Okay.
So but he's known to be one of the first black men that lived in this area. So anyhow, the people started to come in around that same time. After the War of 1812, they started to move into St. Catharines. Harriet Tubman finally came here in 1851.
Yep.
She had 11 runaways with her. And then after that time, she made several trips back to Maryland to bring her family and others up here. There was and they settled out behind the church there,
Okay.
where the new police department is going.
Right.
In that area, that was where the first church was built. And then the existing church was built in 1851, where it is
And
today.
that's Geneva and Welland. Just to
Geneva
give
and
people
Welland.
a marker,
Right.
Geneva and Welland is the BME church.
Right.
The BME stands for?
British Methodist Episcopal. They're part of that conference.
Right.
It's all over Ontario.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Nyarayi, going to bring you into the conversation, and you're the CEO of Tools of Empowerment for Success Niagara, TOES.
That's right.
And tell us a bit about your organization and why this organization is an important part of our community, what we're working here.
Well, TOES Niagara is, we never call it Tools of Empowerment because it's too long.
So that's what it
everybody
stands
just
for.
calls it
Yep.
TOES Niagara.
Yep.
And it was created because having been a newcomer to Canada myself, when I first got here, there was a lot of settlement organizations that dealt with ESL, and they dealt with your settlement, your immigration processes, but I realized that there was no organization in the region that dealt or helped women, newcomer women to Canada, to assimilate into the Canadian culture. And so taking into cognizance that most of the women are coming from backgrounds where women empowerment, women's voices are non-existent, it was important to have an organization that helped women in that aspect so that they could at least be able to compete on the same level as their Canadian counterparts. And so TOES Niagara came into being.
So where did you come from? What was the...
I'm from Zimbabwe, Southern Africa.
Yep.
And I've been in Canada for 5 years. This is my 6th year in Canada.
And how long in St. Catharines, Niagara?
Since I came here.
Yeah?
Yeah, since I came here, I came straight to Niagara.
And what a wonderful story. So you came here and then you saw a gap, I'll call it, in the services. And so you came and started up your own organization with a group of people?
I started it on my own.
Ah, that's even better. That's even better.
Well, because, I don't know, I worked at Niagara College for a bit, and then I worked for Ontario Office Works, and then in the whole thing, I just thought, you know what? I consider myself to be a bit on the confident side, and that's because I guess of my background and my upbringing. But then I struggled with that kind of confidence. I was struggling with my new environment, and I was wondering if I am struggling and I don't have the language barrier and the self-advocacy piece onto it. What about the other women? What are they doing? How are they managing to navigate Niagara? And so TOES Niagara came into being.
So how would someone get in touch with your organization?
We're
market?
on Facebook, Toes Niagara, Twitter at Toes Niagara, and our offices are in Welland, 195 East Main Street, and our phone number is 289-820-5354.
And there's also an event coming up that takes place in February 9th. That's going to be, and it's the second annual Advocating for Black Excellence Awards, Niagara.
That's
Tell
right.
us a bit about it.
It was just a platform I created, which I thought, was important to highlight or to show the role that the black people are playing in agri. Like you alluded to earlier on, a lot of people are not aware of the contributions that black people have made and continue to make in Niagara, and so I think it is important that those contributions and the roles that black people are playing are shown to the public. And also it's two-tier. It's important for us as black people to have our children have positive role models of their own color, because the narrative out there is not positive for black people. And so just to fix that broken narrative, it is important that black kids grow up seeing that there are black people doing great things in the community, that color really has nothing to do with it.
Right.
And so we have the Advocating for Black Excellence Awards.
So I'll ask you a quick question, just in terms of your experience as someone new to the community. How do you feel about the embracement of the community? And that's, we don't have a lot of time, but I'd like to get your view on that. Did you feel it was a welcoming community?
I think on the face of it, it is. The community is very welcoming to newcomers. I think the problems start arising when you start getting into systems and policies, right?
Yes.
Because most of the issues that newcomers face or black people face in the region is mostly systemic. But when you're on the ground with people in general in the community, they're very embracing of newcomers, because people want to know, right? People are curious. People are fascinated by different cultures, and I find it's embracing. Yeah.
That's great, and I want to applaud you for taking the initiative to start up an organization that's helping people in our community, and I think Toes Niagara is a great indicator of the services that you're attempting to provide to break down some of those barriers as well.
Right.
And Donna, I want to thank you for taking the time to come on the show. What a lot of folks probably don't know is that you're also a guest speaker. You go on tour, you speak at high schools, you speak at elementary schools, you speak as part of touring groups where you're sharing that rich history of black culture in Canada and in communities. And as it is Black History Month here in St. Catharines, I encourage you to go to our local museum, the St. Catharines Museum at the Lock 3. It is a very great resource, and we do have on display a lot of that rich history that celebrates the history of black culture here in St. Catharines. And as we were talking about, Donna, Brock University has some interesting artifacts. So it's a great month. There's a lot of celebration. Looking forward to the dinner, looking forward to seeing who the recipients, the award winners are.
Excited.
And I look forward, it's not just February, it's throughout the year. We should be celebrating our diversity, our cultures,
Absolutely.
our history. And we're shining a light now, but we should be shining a light throughout the year. So thank you very much for joining us. And I look forward to seeing everyone out and about. I hope you have a wonderful Family Day weekend. And it's an exciting part of the year to be in St. Catharines. And I say that because it's cold. So get outside, get some fresh air, get some physical activity, and just enjoy everything that we have in our community. So until the next episode of Our Home with Mayor Sendzik, have a wonderful, wonderful day.